violation of their rights at that very moment for their own safety.
The Mitrice Richardson incident was obviously a tragedy, and my heart goes out to the family. But I think that's endemic of law enforcement failing to see the consequences of their actions in a big picture scenario. I mean, if you've ever been to this particular station, Lost Hills, to know that someone was going to walk to PCH through Malibu Canyon, I think we all know that we shouldn't have let that happen. But what can we learn from that? We can learn from that we need to be more in tune to people's needs. And, you know, I like to say that, you know, reintegration begins on arrest. You don't just kick somebody out the door, give them bus fare, and see what happens. Mitrice, in custody, there should have been a plan that went into effect when that person, now I realize I'm Monday morning quarterbacking here, so I don't have any independent knowledge of this investigation. But I know if I were to arrest someone down in PCH and bring them 7-8 miles up the road, she's probably going back for her car. There should have been a plan in place, or at least a systemic practice of figuring out what's going to happen with this person when they get out in this, what's essentially a rural area there in Lost Hills. So I'd like to see more of a plan of action, if you will, for how we treat people. We can't just triage them. Yeah, there's going to come times when it needs to be done, but to make sure that we start right away with finding the services, lining up whatever needs to happen, whether it's mental illness, whether it's medical treatment, whether they need to make a phone call to their family, what have you. So there's better ways that can be handled. Now, in the ensuing months after that, I think the real failure on the part of the Sheriff's Department is how that was responded to, and how the community was treated and how the family was treated. You can't be afraid to show people what we're doing. I think if the Sheriff's Department come out and said, you know, we might have messed up here, let's all go out and try to see what we can do to improve this, that's one thing. But to say that it wasn't our responsibility, or we couldn't have done anything different, I think that is a leadership failure. So as Sheriff, I want to see a more holistic approach to dealing with people when they're arrested and how they get out of that arrest or that custody stint. Thank you.
In that particular case, when she was about to be released and we knew that she may have had some possible mental problems, we should have got a hold of the PET team, the psychological evaluation team. And then maybe they could have held her for a 72-hour observation until a family member can pick her up. Where Lost Hill Station is, that's pretty much an industrial complex right behind or around the station. So to allow a young lady to get out at 2 o'clock in the morning and try to find a ride somewhere is totally irresponsible. But what's worse is what happened after that. The investigation that took place. You know, we moved the body. We never move a body. We moved the body, and the coroner got there afterwards, and why was the body moved? So we really messed up in a lot that took place within that investigation. And so you got to question the entire incident. What took place from the time she was arrested, she got to the station, why she was released at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then why was the body moved and the evidence moved. And we all know from the academy you never do that. The coroner gets there, picks up the body, and then that's the end of it. And the homicide comes out and they take their photographs. So why was the body moved? There's too many unanswered questions regarding that young lady's death.
So to get to how do we implement real reforms, we can, you know, rather than talk about the specifics of that case, let's talk about common sense. You know, a deputy or a police officer will drive a couple miles to a donut shop, right, to get a cup of coffee or something like that, as people will joke around. But yet, at 2 in the morning, they couldn't offer a ride home to somebody, you know. And so this isn't talking about that specific case, but it's about common sense, about courtesy, you know, officers of peace that we're all supposed to be. We should, that's really where it comes into task. I mean, there's 5150 laws that are in place, there's release laws that are in place, but this incident comes, and incidents like these come down to common sense and common courtesy and really prioritizing what our function and role is to help other people. And so that's really where we have to give clarity and that compassion of making sure that our people understand the client that they're dealing with, the person that they're dealing with upon release.
You hear a lot of common themes here, and I think for a reason. Somebody who is in our custody is in our custody. They're under our care. We're responsible for them. We can't release somebody who's mentally incompetent, who's impaired by alcohol or by drugs, and what we have here is absolutely a very tragic situation, but again, it goes back to that piece of what we expect in the people we hire: competence, character, and compassion. Hope she's going to be okay if I release her? Hope is not a strategy. We need a plan. This is not an isolated situation. This kind of thing happens on a regular basis. There are mental health resources out there. We deal with them every day. Why that wasn't done in this case, I'm not sure. I don't have the details on this investigation. But I'm interested in what attempts were made to contact family, to contact friends or neighbors, to be able to get Mitrice a ride home. So hopefully there's some lessons learned from this very tragic situation, and we can take that and be better off for it. But certainly troubling, I think, to all of us as we read the case.
I think this is symptomatic of the need for a cultural shift within the Sheriff's Department. With this election, we have a historic opportunity to fundamentally change the way we do business. This particular case was a tragedy. It also had some issues that were devoid of common sense. But we need to change the perspective of the organization looking out. And the way we do that is by institutionalizing community policing. We need to establish a real partnership between all 23 of our stations and every aspect of our operation and the communities we serve. We partner and we work together to solve problems. And what that does is it builds relationships, it builds mutual trust, it builds empathy. And when we make that true cultural shift, like we did at Carson Station when I was a captain there for 6 years, when we have situations like this arise, we're going to have folks that think about the possible outcomes, the possible negative outcomes of making a poor common sense decision. As I said, this is a historic opportunity for us to do this. We need to, once and for all, institutionalize a community policing philosophy in the LA County Sheriff's Department. We'll be the first agency in the entire country that's able to do it at this scale, and we can serve as a model not only for our people internally, but for all the other agencies out there.